Good morning, everybody. My name is Peter Arceo. I am the general manager for the Yaamava Resort and Casino at San Manuel. And I want to thank you for joining us this morning for our panel session titled The Power of Connections. So in this panel, you will hear from a variety of different people from different backgrounds and different industries on the topic of connections and how networking and connections that provided a successful part of their career to help you as you develop and grow in your personal and professional life. So with that, I'm going to go around the horn and ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, just a brief introduction about who they are, what they do, and then we'll start out the panel session. We'll start with Jennifer Anthony. Jennifer. I think you're on mute, Jennifer.
You'd think I figured this out by now, right? All right, my name is Jennifer Anthony, Vice President of Property Marketing here at Yaamava Casino. I have been here about 6 months and loving it. It's a great organization to be a part of. I've been in the casino industry about 15 years, various jobs and locations across the country. Here at Yaamava, I am responsible for casino marketing, so the player development and promotions arm, as well as the advertising arm of the marketing realm.
Thank you, Jennifer. Brian Christopher. Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning. Yes. Okay. So I am a social influencer. I have a channel called Brian Christopher Slots. And what I do is I travel across the country to different casinos, promoting the casinos, the slot machines, responsible gambling. And I upload videos every day of the week or go live from a casino such as Yaamava as well to an audience of over 1.1 million. And I get around 20 million views a month. So we have a great audience.
Thank you, Brian. Look forward to hearing your story later. Laura.
Good morning as well. Happy Monday. My name is Laura Fernandez, and I head up the travel tourism vertical at SiriusXM. SiriusXM actually acquired Pandora, the music app, about 3 years ago. So we have SiriusXM, we have Pandora, and we just acquired this podcast app called Stitcher, as well as some different ad tech. So I oversee the strategy at the company from the advertising perspective. And so if we have a casino or gambling or a travel brand that advertises on our platform, that's my team. And I've known Peter for quite some time. When I started at Pandora, I've been with the company for about 9 years. And when we started actually a casino gaming vertical first, and because we didn't have any strategy for casinos and gaming. And Peter was my first person I presented to when I launched the vertical. And Peter has been such a mentor to me through the years as we continue to grow from a company standpoint, and then how we work with casinos and gambling brands. So thank you, Peter.
Thank you for joining, Laura. It's good to see you again. Look forward to sharing your story with the rest of the audience out there. David, can you give us a little brief background about who you are?
Absolutely, Peter. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday and V Fair Day. I'm the Chief Hospitality Officer here at San Manuel, now Yaamava. And I've been here now 6 exciting years. We're in growth mode, and the best is yet to come. I've been in the industry now for 25 years, working for top casino resorts across coast to coast, New York, Las Vegas, spent a little time down south there. Graduate of Buff State College, hospitality, great program there, and served in the U.S. military. I'm also passionate about hospitality there, obviously, and I'm passionate about the Bills over there. We've got a big game tonight.
Well, David, we'll all be rooting for the Bills today in our building. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to jump straight into, let's go with Brian. Brian, talk about, because what you do depends heavily on networking and connections. Maybe you can share a little bit about how you've leveraged that throughout your, the last few years. You've really blown up big. How has that played a role in the development of what you're doing?
Right. Well, I mean, relationships is everything. Whenever I take on a new project or a new partnership with a casino or a brand, I'm not looking at just satisfying that one need. I'm looking for a future with them as well. I want to build with them and show them how good I can be and how much further we can grow. So, you know, I mean, for my very first time visiting your casino, I guess over 5.5 years ago, you know, I always had in my mind that, you know, I should start doing partnerships with casinos. And you know, Yaamava was the very first casino to really take that chance on me. I was a tiny channel. I had, I think, around 10 or 15,000 followers at that time. But you know, I just went up to them and I'm like, look, this is what I do. I think we should have a great partnership together. I reach, you know, tens of thousands of people at that time. And you know, social media is super strong. And so, yeah, I just kind of pushed forward with that and kept building my relationship with them.
Thank you for sharing that. I remember those early years, and you know, we were both filling each other out as to how we can benefit each other, and there was a lot of collaboration. Would you say that collaboration played a key role in those early years of forming a relationship with the partnership that can help grow for both individuals or both organizations, right?
Yeah, I'd say it's a big part of it. A lot of it is also built on trust, you know, just to see, just, you know, to also like allow me to explore what I'm doing and see how that goes, you know, because, you know, so basically when I do a partnership with a casino, I'll ask them, you know, what kind of message they want me to put out there, what things I should be promoting, right? But I'm not asking for a script to read. So, you know, they'll give me a list of like 20 different amenities they have, and I'll pick out the ones that I feel my audience would most respond to, and just deliver it in my own words. You know, it's good to tell my audience, because I feel like I know them the best. And so yeah, there's that trust factor as well. But we are definitely working together to come to an agreement on how it should all come together.
I agree. Your authenticity is awesome. And, you know, I just think that's why you're able to connect with your audience so well, is because it's so authentic and real, which is why we love working with you. I'm going to go back to Laura. Laura, you know, talking about, you know, what you mentioned 9 years ago when we first met and developing something essentially from scratch. I remember those early conversations, and it was like, well, you know, here are some possibilities of where you want to go, and setting the strategy, I think, was something that was top of mind for you.
Yes.
So tell me how you nurtured relationships, not only the one that we had, but also others that you developed along the way, because it's been really fun to watch you grow that vertical within your organization into something really big. And I think ultimately your vision was executed the way you thought it should be. How did you do that? For those out there, I'm sure there are some people in similar roles where they're like, I want to develop something, not sure where to start, not sure how to get buy-in from senior leadership. What were some of the things that you did to employ your connections and network to get from A to B?
When, you know, I was very fortunate. When I started with Pandora, we were really in our infancy stage from an advertising standpoint. And so you had that flexibility to really showcase different verticals to build out. And with casino gaming, this sounds very elementary, but I showed the revenue potential. And I showed the revenue potential that if we built a strategy and we actually had the value prop of why a casino brand should activate on an audio platform, this is how much revenue we can drive. So I do look at from a revenue standpoint first. And then secondly, I knew that I needed to seek out brand leaders and industry leaders, and to really understand their needs. I, in very early stages with talking with you, Peter, it's like you figured out the different lines of business within a casino, of like the property, the entertainment, and the gambling. So then how can you activate and accomplish those goals on an audio platform? So that was our strategy. And the fact before of like not really knowing anyone in the industry, I seeked out people that, and I just was very straightforward. I was like, look, I'm launching this division. Here's the brand. Here's our value prop. Need your help. And I've always gone about that throughout my whole career, is like, I always gravitate towards industry leaders. And I did that when we launched, because we launched casino gaming first, and then that evolved into travel tourism that includes everything. And you think about a company like Pandora, now SiriusXM, we didn't have a travel tourism casino gaming division. And that was also like to make sure that we were unique. But when I launched travel tourism, and same with casino and gaming, because I didn't really know anyone, I wasn't asked to speak. I wasn't able to like get in front of conferences. So I built my own content. I was like, okay, like I will build my own thought leadership webinar. I will do my own thought leadership piece, and I will bring in my own industry experts. So if I wasn't getting asked to speak, I was building out my own to make sure that I was able to evangelize our platforms in the space.
Getting the word out there and letting people understand the vision and where you want to go is certainly a key part of that. Jennifer, I know along the way you've worked in several organizations within the industry and have built up quite an impressive network. Can you talk about how you've leveraged that and the power of connections to be successful in your career and to move forward successful campaigns and projects that you've done?
Sure. Yeah, so I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting in my office with my team talking about, hey, here's what we want to accomplish. And the next question is, who do we know that can help us, right? So there's a lot of networking involved, and obviously working with my media partners, like Sirius and others. Also working with vendors. I mean, there's a lot of hands, helping us be successful. And on the flip side, there's the networking part also brings you opportunities that you didn't even know you wanted. Because there's also those people are doing the same thing in their office, right? They're the ones that are saying, I want to do this, who can help us? And then they're calling us, right? And saying, I have this idea. Similar to, I think, what Brian did, right? He had this idea and he reached out to us. And so between both of those, I feel like it's really been helping the marketing efforts of us, between partnerships and just helping us get to know other people in other industries, and being creative and coming up with how can we leverage all of this together and lift us all up.
Thank you, Jennifer. And David, you've been around from the Navy, so you were outside the industry, made your way into the casino world. Can you talk about, for those folks that may be listening that maybe coming from outside the industry, and there's a lot of military folks looking to transition into other industries, how did you leverage sort of those connections along the way and to cross over to different industries, different states, different organizations? What have you found to be successful?
Well, I can tell you, Peter, I wouldn't be here today if it was not for connections. And just kind of getting ready for the talk here today, I looked at every significant move and milestone in my career there, and it was all from a connection. And a lot of those connections I didn't have before the event happened, right? So early on, yes, out of high school, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do there. And, I took a leap and decided I would join the Navy. I was from upstate New York, a little bit smaller town there. Very uncomfortable move for me, but I knew if I really wanted to do something, at that point in my life, to just go for it, right? So got on a plane, went out to San Diego, California, and started boot camp. Now, boot camp is a different kind of connecting. So we won't talk about that today, but you're in a new place, in a new environment, and you're with a lot of people with different backgrounds and come from different walks of life, and you have a big responsibility. So you really have to put yourself out there and learn how to connect with the right people for the right reasons to survive. And so I learned very early on, how to do that. And some of it was teaching, and some of it was just learning, the hard way, and along the ways you learn leadership skills. So I learned to, be comfortable being uncomfortable. And so when I got back to, when I was discharged, served honorably, and went back to Buffalo, went to college, which is another, opportunity to come outside your shell and build relationships. Those relationships have lasted me a lifetime. So I lean on professors and colleagues and so on and so forth. And so I was back in a small town in Lewiston, New York there. And I didn't have any idea I wanted to be in the casino industry. I liked to go to casinos the 1 or 2 times I had gone there, but I was looking at hotels, restaurants, hospitality in general. And I had heard that there was somebody from our town that was in Vegas recruiting for MGM Grand, right? So nobody could get the phone number of this young lady. And so somehow we got the phone number of her mother, right? So I called her mom and I said, hey, introduce myself, let her know what I was doing, and said that I'd be interested in contacting her daughter to learn a little bit about what she's doing, how she ended up where she's at, and maybe something could come out of it. So cold called somebody I didn't know, and you'd be surprised. People are very receptive, very welcoming, and want to help you out. So she said, come on out to Vegas. I'll show you around a little bit. Maybe I can get you an interview and, take it from there. So I ended up going to Vegas, meeting her, meeting some people she introduced me to. The excitement of young man, Vegas, the glitter, was pretty much an easy decision at that point that I wanted to be there and be part of that. And I made a connection with the person that interviewed me, right? I didn't know him. I applied for a role. I didn't even really know what it was. It was a stewarding position. We called it something different in the service. But heck, I applied for it. It was on Graveyard. He offered me the job, and I went home and told my wife we're going to Vegas. Now that was a different conversation as well, growing up in a small town there. But just going out of my comfort zone and being willing to get on a plane and talk to people and do things I've never done before. And I was going in one direction and ended up in a completely different direction in an amazing industry. And I've been doing it, like I said, 25 years now.
Thank you, David. And so along the way, I'm sure you've mentored some people as well as found some mentors to help you out. What are some tips for those who are out there that maybe perhaps have been thinking about, gee, I'd really like to have a mentor or find someone to mentor me. I just don't know how to approach that. How have you approached finding a mentor or mentoring others throughout your career, David?
Yeah, that's a great question, Peter. And again, wouldn't be where I'm at today without some amazing mentors. And, back then, I don't know that I was officially called a mentor. I just, would meet somebody that was doing things well and seemed very successful, and just somebody that I felt like I would want to be around and I would want to learn from. So I found ways to be around that person, right? Whether it was coming in early or staying late or making an appointment. And a lot of times when you make an appointment with somebody, they're in a higher position, they're busy, right? So without being annoying, sometimes, that stuff gets canceled, but you reschedule. And, we talked a little bit about being genuine and authentic. So don't be afraid to ask. People will be very receptive and they want to help, but just be honest what you're doing, why you want to do it, and, find some commonality there. So I've had a lot of success meeting people that are doing really good things, that want to take the time to help somebody out. And there's a lot of great people out there. So, I certainly want to be one of those people. So in some cases, people have reached out to me and I've been more than happy to assist them in any way I could. And again, it's kind of reciprocal. If they're there early, I'll come in early. If they're there late, I'll come in late. If it's a Saturday, I'll come in on a Saturday. If you want to meet for coffee, we'll meet for coffee. You gotta make a commitment. And so I've had a lot of success in mentoring professionals and in them achieving some very good goals and milestones. So it's really, again, coming back to getting out of your comfort zone, being yourself. People don't typically want to ask for help, but by asking somebody for help, you're actually helping them, because people really want to help you.
That's great. Finding the opportunity to connect, I think, is super important. In my career, there was a point where I wanted to really get in front of someone who I thought would be a great mentor, but his calendar was busy. But I learned that he came to work an hour before everyone else did. So I said, okay, if I really want to be around that person and have their time, I need to get there before they get there. And so I did, and I started inviting them for breakfast at team dining and said, oh, I'm going to breakfast at team dining. If you have time, drop by, would love to just catch up. And over time, after seeing me do that repeatedly, he came and started hanging out for breakfast from time to time. And before you know it, I got a big chunk of his time where I could ask, personal growth, questions, just questions about how the business is run. And he became a mentor for me over the years. And so it was just an interesting way to see how that developed. Laura, is there anything that you can share along those lines, something unique and different where either you mentored someone or you found a mentor that you could share with the audience that maybe they are not thinking of as they think through that part of their personal development?
Throughout my whole career, I've been very, very fortunate that every one of my leaders, my direct manager, has turned into a mentor. I've actually been reporting into the same person for almost the past 9 years at SiriusXM. And she is my mentor through and through. And it's nice because, again, I report directly into her, and I've known her throughout my whole time there. But one thing about my boss, Christine, is, and this is something that she taught me, she's all about the individual person and that individual person's growth. And while obviously she's wants to do what's the best thing for the company, but she looks at the individual person first. And that's always the way that I've now look at mentoring other people, is like the individual person and how can you help them grow and develop. And I am a big fan of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably one of my favorite social networking tools. And I've received, I really do, I try to respond to every single message I get, and I've been getting a lot of messages from college students. Hey, just want to jump on the phone with you, 5 minutes, just to understand like how you started your career. I find that to be so incredible, and I love how proactive they are. And they instantly, send me a note. I respond. They're quick with like a Zoom invite, and we have a conversation. And I also love the proactivity when people are coming at me and, hey, is SiriusXM hiring? Instead of just saying, is SiriusXM hiring, looking at the job site and saying, I have applied to XYZ positions, and then I can help from a referral standpoint. I love that proactivity, but I do from LinkedIn, if there is someone outside of your organization that you want to mentor, send them a message. And then if they don't respond, look to all your mutual contacts. I mean, it's about like going as wide as you possibly can to get a meeting with that person.
Yeah, that you really bring up a good point there, which is do some prep work, right? If you want to make an impression on a potential mentor connection, you got to put in some work to do it. You can't assume that people are going to know what's in your head, right? Take a chance, but be prepared. Brian, I'm sure with what you're doing, you probably get a gazillion messages on how do I be the next Brian Christopher, right? How do you go filter? I'm sure there's more messages than you can respond to. What sort of catches your attention, and what sort of messaging or approaches to networking when someone reaches out like that do you find to be most effective?
Yeah, so I mean, we get like over 1,000 messages a day. So I do have a team that helps me go through that. But in terms of this, I get a mix of different messages from creators that want my help. Those people who say, hey, Brian, I'm starting a new channel in a month. Can you promote it for me? Right? I'm gonna say no to that one. If they've been working at it for a while and I look at their work and they've been grinding and they're doing consistent work, then I will take the time and I will go through what they're doing and help them and give them ideas. What else? Like I even had one last week, a newish channel. It's been around for about 2 months. They were asking for any kind of help from me, and I looked at their channel and I said, actually no, they wanted to do a video with me actually at your casino. They wanted me to go to Yaamava to do a video with them. And I mean, they're a tiny channel. They're brand new, but I don't mind at all doing videos with them as long as, you know, they're promoting responsible gambling, there are G-rated content, and they're consistent with their product. So I gave them a few ideas. I said, you know what? You're doing a few of your posts are a little bit spammy like. They're clickbaity, you know. So I said, if you fix that up, because I mean it's a little misleading to your fans, but I love what you're doing. It is like G-rated. You should show your face more often because you're a good-looking couple, but you're not even there anywhere, and people want to connect with you on a bigger level. And I said, you know, work on those few things and then come back to me in a few months and we'll talk. But yeah, I do get hit up a lot, like, hey Brian, how do I do what you do? Because I mean, when I started, there was like 5 channels. Now there's thousands of these people trying to do what we do. So I actually made a video called "How to Make a Slot Channel." Because I was getting tired of answering everybody the exact same questions over and over. I actually turned it into a live stream. I talked for an hour and a half. I gave out all my tips and tricks and told them every site to use, how I do what I do. And I think that helps a lot. So now I can tell people, go to howto.bcslots.com and the video will be there for you to figure out what to do.
Well, that's tremendous and awfully, you know, generous of you to do that. I mean, that's great. I think it speaks to your willingness to improve the industry and make the industry better, as well as promote responsible gaming, which is something that I think most people overlook. So we really appreciate that part of what you do because it's fully in line with our values here in Yaamava. So I'll go next to you, Jennifer. Along the way, mentorship and helping others, how have you approached that? Any tips that you can give to the audience along those lines?
So I guess from a mentor-mentee perspective, I kind of just echo what the team has said here, right? Like you just really need to make sure that you're willing to put forth the effort, right? And the commitment. In terms of finding a mentor, I don't know. I feel like I was asked this question many years ago, and I feel like you like can't force it, right? Like you can't just go up to me and say like, hey, can you be my mentor? Like there has to be obviously a desire on their side, but also that connection has to also be there, right? Like if you guys don't drive, I was part of an organization that did a forced mentorship, and it just was awkward, right? Like I don't know you, you don't know me. I don't really know much about you, you know, so a lot of my mentors have come from similar to I think what you said, Peter, about just trying to capitalize on the time of someone that I wanted to spend time with, right? And I wanted to learn and grow through, you know, this person and their knowledge. So I think but again, if you're the mentee, please be sure to make sure that you are willing to put forth the effort and the commitment, because I think all of us are willing to help as long as you're also willing to help, right? So that's kind of where I've seen the most success from the mentor-mentee kind of relationship.
Thank you for that. I'm going to do a real quick poll. Raise your hand if you're an introvert. 3 or 2.5. David's kind of a half. And Brian, you're extroverted, correct? Okay.
Both. I feel like I'm both.
You're both. Okay.
Both.
We'll get around to you, Laura, somewhere in the middle here.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, you know, the audience is probably split along the way that the panelists are. So when we talk about connections, when we talk about networking, for those that are introverted, it's difficult, right? I mean, Jennifer, can you talk through that? How you're able to do these things that we've been talking about here in the first half of the session as an introvert? How do you do that? How do you overcome that? Are there any techniques or things that you go through that you can share with others that may be helping them break through that barrier?
Yeah, so one of the things I wish I learned earlier in my career was the power of connections, right? And being an introvert, I tended to want to stay in my comfort zone and, you know, not build these relationships. But once I started to understand what that could do for me, kind of the desire to be successful overcame the uncomfortableness, right? And so but it is something that mentally, you kind of have to tell yourself, right? Like, I don't want to do X. I don't want to go to this conference. I don't want to go to this dinner, whatever it might be. But you're like, but if I went, who could I meet? Who could I network with? Who can help me further, right? And that seems more important than me wanting to be at home in my pajamas, right? So, but the other thing too, it's like twofold. One is, once you start to build your connection, you can actually kind of become more introverted because you can rely on connections that you're comfortable with to help you build more connections, right? And so, thus LinkedIn and things of that nature, but also just people you work with. And then my last tip that I was joking with someone the other day is bring your own extrovert. So we're not hermits. We just are like not comfortable in certain situations, right? But if you have a friend that is truly extroverted, they can always help you break the ice, right? Like, because once you get in there, then I'm pretty sure you can handle yourself. I remember I was at this party one time and I was with our chief legal counsel, and she was literally dragging me, from person to person, like by the arm, like to meet people. And I was like, there's like something to this actually. So I think it's just, you got to get out of your comfort zone. But once you start to do it, it becomes, I think maybe David, you said this, comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And just making sure that, you set yourself up to how you are most comfortable, whether it be bring your own extrovert or have someone do your own, help introduce you, et cetera, et cetera. So.
That's fantastic. And I have a couple of quick stories to share later about bring your own extrovert, but I'll go to you, Laura. You started out on one side and then you went to the other. You're like kind of both, like David kind of did that too. So tell us a little bit about that and how you were able to overcome that tendency to be introverted at times.
It's with me, I consider myself an extrovert when it comes to my career. And I'm in sales, I'm in advertising sales. And so I have to get out there, and now I lead the vertical, so I have to speak. But from a personal standpoint, I want to be by myself all the time. And so I need that, I love my husband, but I do like being by myself, but I need that alone time to recharge. So I do believe that, there's not really a true extrovert and introvert, because you do from look at like a work-life balance. You still need to recharge. But one thing early on in my career, I made Fridays my day to connect with new people. I do love to chit chat on the phone, and I made Fridays my day, whether it's new people at the company or partners that I haven't spoken to in a moment. And Fridays are typically, I would say not really right now, but a little bit lighter. And so I use that time on Fridays to make sure I connect with new people or people I haven't spoken to in a while. That's always been a goal of mine in my entire career. Through the pandemic, it made it a little bit more challenging because I live in Las Vegas, so I'm lucky I get to see a lot of our casino partners in real life. But it made it a little bit challenging, but I just made, walk and talk conversations of let's not jump on Zoom. Can we just jump on the phone, catch up, see how things are going, quick state of the industry. And I always made Fridays my day to connect and have conversations with partners or new people I haven't met yet.
I love that balance between personal and professional, and the Fridays. That's really great. You carved out time specifically for that. I love that. That's really great. Thanks for sharing that, Laura. David, what about you? You were kind of waffling too. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think being in hospitality, being in the service business, I'm very comfortable with that. I mean, it's in your blood. You want to do it. It's what you're good at. But outside of your comfort zone, it's a little uncomfortable. It can be a little scary, right? But we've touched on it. The biggest growth for me anyway is getting out of the comfort zone. facing your fears, and it's something you have to work at, you know, so it's been somewhat intentional. I've talked to people about it, I've read about it, you know, and it's something that I've worked at. But then you do something you're uncomfortable doing, and it's a great feeling. You know what I mean? So you got to get past that. And once you get past it and you learn that you're going to be successful, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? We're, you know, we're talking about meeting people here. You know, people are people. And so once you get past that and you start doing those things, man, you can, the sky's the limit. So, you know, I've made some major moves in my life, professionally and personally, to continue to grow as a personal and professionally.
That's fantastic, David. So it's preparing yourself mentally, knowing the task at hand and that you need to overcome it, I think, is where you find that will to get through it. Now, Brian, the lone extrovert, the one that raises his hand on the other side there, what can you share as an extrovert? Is there any tips that you can share with other extroverts? Because I think extroverts could fall into some traps where folks perceive them to be a little bit too strong at times with their ability to communicate and talk to people. So what can you share along those lines? As an extrovert, what have you learned along the way to help you become most successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think I became more extrovert because I was an actor. I was an actor from a kid. And we have this thing in the acting industry where they say it takes 1,000 auditions to perfect how to do an audition, essentially. You know, your first few auditions, you go in, you are nervous, you're shaking, you can't even say a sentence, you don't even sound human, right? And I think it's the same thing with introducing yourself to other people. And you know, now I could walk into any audition and just, I could nail it or I could bomb, but I don't really care. I'm just gonna go out there and do my best, right? And so I think there's also like a sense of being okay with who you are, but also understanding your surroundings and how everybody else is gonna be around you. Being self-aware, because I am so outspoken and personable, and that I keep an eye on myself to make sure I don't sound or come across as very cocky. You know, I want to make sure I'm professional, and if someone is an introvert, I don't want to come across as harsh either. But what's really cool is that, so I'm from Canada originally, Toronto, and I went to a thing called Second City, which I know it exists out in LA and other across the country here, and they have other versions of it too. It's basically for improvisation. And so when I moved out to LA first, I started taking those courses again. And when you go to like the 101 class, I'd say maybe like 6 out of 10 people in my class were business people that do not have any intention of going into acting whatsoever, but they were there to like loosen up and be more comfortable giving presentations or just speaking with others in a crowd or whatever else. And it was super cool because it really like took them out of their comfort zone and made them just, you have to get over yourself, I guess, right? And get comfortable speaking and messing up and just coming up with things really fast. And it's not about being funny or whatever. It's just being normal, just being able to carry a conversation out of nothing. And so I would suggest doing that. Even my husband, he works for a marketing agency. And they actually had Second City come to them, and they did improv lessons with people at work to get everyone in the room involved. And he said that was huge for everybody there, and it got everybody really comfortable and out of their shells a little bit too.
That is fantastic. I love that. You guys have all shared components of, I think, what in my mind I had to go through at some point in time in my career, and how I kind of broke through this. It's funny, the bring your own extrovert. I remember when I was working at the Las Vegas Hilton, the hotel sales team, they knew everybody. And so when they invited me to, you know, an industry luncheon or an industry, you know, a cocktail hour, I'm going with you. And the reason why is because I knew if I did, they would introduce me to everybody. I wouldn't have to do anything. All I had to do was walk around with them, and they were like, oh, this is so-and-so and so-and-so. And so that's a really great tactic. And when you said that, Jennifer, that immediately popped in my mind. And then the other one, Laura, what you said, you got to put yourself out there. You know, there was a point in my life where I was like, man, you know, how do I do this? I don't know how to do this. And I was deathly afraid to engage in our industry that I worked in, because because I felt pressure, like, well, what if I don't come across very well? So I said, how do I practice? So I joined things like the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce. There was an organization that was spun off from there called Vegas Young Professionals, and they would host social hours. And you know what? It was a safe place. Why? Because I was networking with people that I probably would never do business with because they're just in other industries or other categories of business that really didn't cross into the path that I was on at the time. And it gave me a safe place to practice, you know, what Brian was talking about. You know, you gotta get out there and just improv and make it up and learn your style to feel comfortable in. And that's a safe place where I was able to do that. And at the end of the day, it didn't really matter, right? And there was no downside there. And so over time, incorporating those techniques that you all have brought up have been tremendous for me, and it just really resonated. So thank you for sharing that. At this particular point in time, I'd like to invite those who are out there, if you would like to ask a question, feel free to type it in Q&A, and we won't be able to see it. And I'll ask and integrate it into the panel session here. But while we're waiting for that, I'm going to turn it back to the panelists. And David, I'm going to go to you first. What would you say on the topic of connections and networking? What would you say to yourself when you were in the Navy coming out? Is there any particular tip that you would say that you've learned that you would tell yourself back then so that you could get to be more successful on this topic faster?
Great question, Peter. I guess just getting out of that uncomfortable zone, like earlier on, like there were probably plenty of opportunities for me to get involved in things where I could be more outgoing, right, more visible. And so maybe taking advantage of some of those. And, you know, there's so many networks out there and so many seminars and so much information, like, you know, that I would just tell myself, take advantage of what's out there. It's there for the taking. And why wait, right? Because a lot of the stuff I did may have been a little bit later on. And fortunately for me, it's worked out. But boy, if you can learn it earlier and it's not as painful, you know, that's the way to go.
Thank you, David. Laura, I'm going to turn to you. Different question, though. In your vertical, when you're looking to hire, you know, people that are coming in as sales folks or business development folks, I'm not sure what you call it there at Sirius.
Sales, yep.
Sales. Okay, so when you're looking for that person who is maybe new to sales or new to sales with Sirius, what sort of tips do you give them as they begin their career as it relates to networking and connections? Is there anything in particular that maybe you say as you onboard them that can help them be more successful for your vertical as they start their career with you?
We do, and I will point out, we do have a great mentorship program at the company where you do get to meet different people. Maybe a little bit, to Jennifer's point, maybe a little awkward at first, but we do have that program to understand all the different divisions. And the main thing I tell any new sales executive coming in and how they network is not only to make sure that they're going to conferences, any networking event. You brought up the young professionals, figure all that out in whatever market you're in. But also, I always go back to, if you have time throughout the day, because especially right now, like, you're going to have some breaks, and instead of like just scrolling through Instagram or, you know, doing something a little bit like that's not maybe as productive, jump on the phone and talk to someone. And I think that is such a lost art of just talking to people. And I, especially for this vertical with travel, tourism, and casino gaming, understanding the current state of the industry is so important. And we understand about how specific brands are activating on our platform. So that's some relevant information that we can share to a brand. And then also just communicating, like, if I I think over the past year, Peter, I've reached out to you like, hey, give me a current state of the industry. How are things going? And that just simple conversation, because it levels everything out. But that's always been my motive. If I'm driving, like I love to chit chat and I love to jump on the phone, talk to people. The more I do that, the better. And that's always the best advice I've given to sales executives coming in to expand their network.
That's great. And just to follow up on that real quick, given your vertical and what you're responsible for, and the increase in people doing Zoom, how has that changed sort of the sales approach now that the travel was restricted for a long time? It's beginning to loosen up. It's still not fully wide open. You see a lot of canceled flights and things that throw a monkey wrench into the travel schedule, even if you are going to go travel. So has there been sort of a change in philosophical approach as to what percentage of time the sales vertical will be in person versus through Zoom or phone, or is it the same and you're just waiting for the travel industry to open wide up? Or, is there any thought there that you could share with everyone?
We are, right now we have sales executives in almost every major market. So if they are comfortable meeting clients face to face, it's all over meals. We're not having any like formal meetings right now. But one thing that I've seen a shift in is the presentations. I am personally not a big fan of a big PowerPoint presentation, especially over Zoom. At the beginning of the pandemic, we had put together all these thought leadership pieces and these presentations, and you're missing that human aspect. And so that's where I go back to, we got to go back to social selling of like, I know that sounds so basic, but like understanding your elevator pitch and understanding really what you're trying to accomplish and how you can solve for a brand's objectives is so important. Because at the end of the day, I think that, from a sales perspective, if you're going through a big PowerPoint presentation, like you're going to get tune out. Like people are multitasking, people are doing other things. And if we can just simplify things into a conversation, look, a lot of people are listening to digital audio right now. Here's the way you can target them on our platform. Here's some great executions. And here's how we can help you. I mean, that's the conversation. And so I'm encouraging my team to, yes, it's great to have some visuals, but go back to just the conversation and talking through the products and understanding them versus just like putting a big deck up there.
Yeah, makes sense. Make complete. You have to rethink your approach, right? I mean, it's not the same. So just to try and take the way it was 2 years ago and apply it to Zoom, I think would be a mistake. So it's really refreshing to hear that your organization has really taken a strategic approach to that and is continuing to review and refine it and make it work for you.
Yeah.
Jennifer, now being on the other side, you're the one that, organizations like Laura or people like Brian, is there anything that you can give out there, tips for individuals that are maybe perhaps looking to connect with you, to work, with what you're doing, or maybe connecting with you professionally? Is there any tips that you would give them to be more effective in how they communicate to you in today's world?
So I echo what Laura was saying. I feel like I've seen this, I'm guilty of it, and I think I've seen other people as well. The Zoom tends to lead to multitasking and losing of attention, right? So if you're comfortable, in person is still better, even if it's over coffee or just a lunch or whatever. And if not, I would say try to keep it more conversational, right? Than going through a big deck. Just because we're all now kind of tied to the computer, and you can hear your chimes come in and IMs come in, and you're like trying. So, and I think it's hard to resist. So if you're gonna do Zoom, Try to keep it brief and keep it conversational, but if you can do in person, again, depending on the person you're meeting and how they're comfortable with that, I still think in person's best. So.
Well, thank you for that, Jennifer. Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you, just slightly different because your line of business is much different than all of us. You're a content creator, and I've been watching you since the pandemic, and it seems like your world has like exploded even bigger. Have you found that because of the pandemic and because people were not doing as much traveling, that some of the focus, because a lot of your content is curated online and really promoted online, did you find that you were able to get more attention from folks that maybe perhaps you found it more difficult to connect with or maybe get an audience with, or was it about the same and maybe you changed your tactics? Or can you shed a little light into that for the audience? We're all very curious to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a huge shift, to be honest. There were 2 months where the casinos were shut completely. And so during that time, I just, was editing my videos and uploading those. But as soon as the first casino reopened in Idaho, I was on that first plane over there to show the world what it's like to be in a casino in a COVID world, and so I did spend the first chunk of the first few months reopening, educating the world on what it was like to be in casinos, but also helping out casinos as well. So I was not charging any fees. I was donating all my super chats to the staff as gratuities to help them, because then they were shut down for months without pay. And again, that was still building relationships. And so that first casino in Idaho, it started off as me helping them. And I covered all my own expenses and everything. And then 1 year later, they're like, "Hey, Brian, we'd love you to come back for a 1-year anniversary." And that was a sponsored trip all of a sudden. So just, creating those relationships is so important. Like when I first started my channel, right, I had no subscribers at the beginning. I went to G2E with about 8,000 subscribers behind my belt. I walked up to this one booth, which was a smoke-free company, A&R, and I said, I love what you guys are doing. I'd love to work with you one day. I didn't have any idea what that meant, but I loved their message. And fast forward, 3 years, and we worked together. So we stayed in contact all those years, and finally had our first project to work together on. And now I'm proud to say that I have a space inside of Plaza in downtown Vegas, which is the only spot in downtown Vegas with a smoke-free area. So just carrying those relationships forward have really gone a long way. I befriended the CEO of a major slot machine manufacturer. And for years, he was telling his staff, "Oh, we got to work together with Brian. We got to work together with Brian." And eventually he's like, he just put the gauntlet down and said, "We got to do it. What are we going to do with you, Brian?" I'm like, "Anything." So he threw me in with Wheel of Fortune, because they have, the Wheel of Fortune brand with IGT. And I did a promotion with them. And, within time, I had Sony knocking on my door from the Wheel of Fortune TV show. And they're like, "Hey, we want to work with you too. Let's do some co-branded merchandise." So now you can go over to the Wheel of Fortune website and buy my t-shirts, which is like insane, and you never would have known if I didn't go up to that CEO or if I didn't go up to that booth when I was a nobody. I wouldn't have had these relationships today. And you just never know, anyone you talk to, they might even be a lower level right now, but one day they're going to be higher up, and maybe they'll remember you, and you can, bring up those relationships and build on that.
You're right. Nurturing and curating those relationships over time is very, very important. So I think what everyone was saying in one way, shape, or form is connecting with people that you find similar to yourself, have similar interests, so that in the future you can all grow together. I'm going to go back to you, Laura. Is there anything, because I'm dying to ask, are there any new trends that you've seen in listenership that would be beneficial to the audience? Like, are people listening more, and are they listening more at night, in the morning? I mean, is there any sort of little nugget where you're like, aha, this was a lot different 2 years ago than it is today, that we could all chew on and think about as we close out this session here in the next few minutes?
Podcast have grown so much. Now it's like 116 million people are listening to podcasts monthly. And that's one of the big reasons we're investing so heavily into this space. We acquired Stitcher, who is not only an app, but creates shows such as Oprah's show, Conan O'Brien. We just got Seth Rogen. And what's been so interesting from the advertising space is also advertising on these on these shows. And what's cool is like you advertise on Conan O'Brien and it goes across all their distribution channels. So podcast listenership has been massive. And then also in-home listening. So in-home listening on connected home devices, the Amazon Alexa, the Google Home. So you've seen a surge of listenership during not only the day, but the weekends, definitely a spike there. But I go back to podcasts, and I love podcasts because they don't interrupt your daily life. And you can be listening to podcasts when you're going on a run, you're cooking, you're cleaning. And I mean, that's what audio is. It just provides such a nice escape from all the visual media we're consuming. I need blue light glasses through and through now. So for me, taking a little break in between the Zoom calls and listening to some audio is my jam right now.
Yeah, podcasts have certainly exploded here over the last couple of years. It's interesting to hear just how big it is. It's just tremendous. Brian, what about you? Anything that you've noticed trends over the last couple of years that you want to share with the audience? Maybe that, aha, most people don't know, but boom, what have you seen?
You know, people just like to binge things a lot. They're watching everything, like anything and everything that they absolutely can. People are watching people play slot machines, you know, and everyone's up on the newest content. And so, yeah, podcasts are huge. Laura, I'm going to hit you up after this for sure. There's another relationship building thing happening right today, you know. But I think it all revolves around social media. A lot of it does, and sharing our experiences. You know, people wanting to share their jackpots they get at the casino or anything else. Yeah, I mean, I'm watching. I mean, probably way too many things at once right now. Probably 9 different shows across different platforms. But we all just want to get connected and share with our friends how we're doing. Yeah, it's incredible how things have changed in the last few years, and especially even over the last year of shutdowns. How we've gone from one set to another, when especially with networks being shut down, or not shut down, but not being able to produce new shows, and so people had to look at other areas. So like podcasts were already booming, but now they're like really booming. You know, so it's really cool to see that.
You're right. We all had to find our own level of entertainment there. There was a last minute question. It's a good one, so I don't want to end just now. It's related to what percentage of mentorship or grooming for advancement is based on old-fashioned work ethic or being very good at networking? That's a really good question. I'm going to turn it over to you, Jennifer, to answer that first. What percentage do you think is work ethic versus networking?
Assigning a percentage is a little difficult, but I know I get where the question is coming from, just because I think when I started, like I had mentioned, I wish I knew more that networking was important. I thought if I put my head down and worked hard, the results would come, right? But if you're working hard and no one knows you're working hard, that kind of defeats the purpose too, right? So, I mean, I think there are definitely people in the world that have gotten further via one versus the other, right? Which is why I tend to lean to it's like a 50-50 split, because you obviously have to put in the hard work and prove yourself for someone to want to kind of be your spokesperson and help you progress, right? So, but I think you have to have the hard work as well. Can't get by with just networking.
Thank you, Jennifer. Laura, it looked like you wanted to jump in there maybe with something.
Yeah, this is such a good question. And because for me, and if I was going to assign percentages, I would do 80% work and then 20% networking. Completely agree with you, Jennifer. It's like, I also had the mentality of like, okay, I'm just going to keep working hard. I'm not going to, just not push myself out and like get myself out on like LinkedIn and everything. but you need that piece. I mean, there's moments where I want to delete every social media app that I have, but know that if I do that, you lose some relevancy. And I know that sounds lame. I admire, there's this one guy I know, he actually owns a bunch of bars in Las Vegas, downtown Las Vegas. And he has no social media, like none. And he has built such a brand. Obviously each of the bars has their own social media, but like he has no brand presence, but he still is such a figure in the city of Las Vegas. So that's the one person, and I will tell you, one person out of my whole network of people that doesn't have their social presence and they don't network. Because I do believe that with social, LinkedIn, you can promote what you're doing from a career standpoint, but a social standpoint, it humanizes you. And as much as I want to, again, delete every app, I can't. But the work portion, I would much prefer to have a sales executive that is working very hard, proactive, and maybe didn't network versus the latter. Because then you turn into this whole like smoke and mirrors situation where it's like, are you actually working? But maybe you're not, but you're doing a great job promoting yourself.
Thank you, Laura. And the way I like to look at it is, if you want to progress in your career, but you don't network and tell anybody, then it's difficult to read minds. It's difficult to understand what your ambitions are. Where do you want to go? What do you want to, I like to craft a plan for someone based on where they want to grow, not because of the position, but where they as an individual want to grow. So I really think that networking is important so that both sides understand each other, what's expected for the role, and also what's expected for people development. So that was a great question. We did go 3 minutes over. So I do apologize for everyone, but hopefully you found this session to be very, very helpful. I want to thank all of the panelists for joining us today. They're very busy, and we appreciate you taking your time out of your busy day to share your thoughts on this topic with all of us. And we here at Yaamava Resort and Casino want to thank all of you who attended for listening and learning a little bit more on how you can develop your personal and professional career. We hope that everyone that listened today is very successful and does great things. I look forward to seeing you all in person sometime soon. So with that, I'm going to close the session and thank everybody for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.